Welcome back to QuestionableSwamis.com, Chuck Pazeshki's video blog where I talk about issues and information around spiral dynamics and how to use spiral dynamics to understand problems and plan for change management. The first couple of video episodes that I've had were mostly about trying to understand the spiral and what it actually means in terms of system change. And as I think I've said earlier, a lot of the stuff you read on the internet is more concerned with various stuff that happens up at the higher end, the spiritual end of the spiral. But the meat of the spiral can actually help us navigate life and understand relationships that we have with other people and how those relationships are formed inside institutional structures, our own communities, and ourselves. And of course, any introduction like this, I have to attribute the three big pioneers of spiral dynamics. Number one would be Clare Graves, who figured it all out back in the 40s, and then of course his student Don Beck and Ken Wilber. And I often, in the earlier ones, I've talked about this wonderful card that Don Beck of Spiral Dynamics Integral Global Values Institute, I think, Global Values Network made. So I've spent a lot of time looking at this card and thinking it. And there's days when I look at this card, I kind of feel like some space alien that got the plate off of Voyager about what really makes humanity tick. So it's really good stuff. And today, what we're going to talk about are transitions. We're going to talk about how people move up and down the spiral. Now, we remember from earlier talks that the spiral has two sides. It's not a hierarchy. It has an I side and a we side, and going up, I, we is how we grow as individuals and also how we grow as societies. The beautiful thing about spiral dynamics is that it basically is based on self-similar principles, which means the things that individuals do in lots of ways are then manifested at higher levels in societies and institutions. Now earlier, when we broke down Don's card with spiral dynamics on it, and of course Don has written a book called Spiral Dynamics, and you can go, feel free to read it. So much stuff on this card we got to go through. When Don made this card, he did a couple of cool things, and we talked about one of the cool things already, which was the orders of societies that are along the bottom, and I think that's in episode 3 or 4, I can't remember, I think it's number 4. Today, we're going to focus on transitions moving up and down the spiral. I'm going to put on my reading glasses here. And when we transfer from, remember the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 levels of the spiral. Okay, we start at survival, moving forward to tribal, authoritarian, an I mode, legalistic, blue, a we mode, entrepreneurial, orange, an I mode, goal-oriented, communitarian, green, human bond, relativistic, sociocentric, communitarian, green, a we mode, yellow values, systemic, integrative, flex flow, whatever that means, I learn. Finally, to turquoise values, globalist, renewalist, we experience. Now, I'm going to kind of read off the card some of this stuff because it's so good. Going from survival, how do you go from a survival society, an I society, to a magical society? And Don's got down here awareness of distinct self, awakening of cause and effect, concerns with threats and fears, and survival requires group effort. Now that certainly makes sense. In other words, basically we know that we're somebody and we're going to be part of a whole, and we have some idea of cause and effect. Now that doesn't necessarily mean that it's rational cause and effect as we would think of it. One of my favorite examples of awakening of cause and effect is there used to be a Native American tribe that lived in the, I think it was the Desde Delta up in Alaska, where the Alsac and the Desde rivers come together, two huge rivers. And back in the 1860s, I think it was, there was what's called a Jukkelhopt, which is a glacial outburst flood. There was something like a 4,000-foot tall snow dam that suddenly broke through, and the waters came down the Alsac River and totally wiped out like 30 or 40% of the tribe. Okay, and that tribe attributed this calamity to the fact that two teenage boys had been torturing a seagull. Okay, so that's cause and effect in their minds. And lest you judge too harshly, look at it this way. What happened after that was they evolved a very envirocentric culture. And that envirocentric culture was very stable. So it doesn't necessarily matter, we have this idea that rationality is always the best thing, and but if you want to look at societal longevity, the book is not written yet on whether rationality really pays off or not. Okay, so how do we get from tribalistic to authoritarian? Emergence of a dominant ego, self more powerful than group, confronts adversaries and dangerous forces to control. Niches are limited. Okay, so we get to the point where you got one guy or gal or whatever who figures out they're the big boss, and they figure out how to kick everybody else's butt. Okay, and then they take over the society and organize it. Okay, and certainly that kind of thing can happen when everyone's up against the wall, and that one guy is the one that steps forward and says, if we don't get this figured out, we're all going to go extinct. So it's actually a very natural progression. But there is a really interesting line that Don has on here. Niches are limited. So what does that mean? That means that somebody in an authoritarian mindset most probably has the idea of scarcity. And that when you go and look at a pool, you're competing against somebody else, and there's only going to be one winner. That's a really important thing to remember, because this haunts business philosophies across the United States. Instead of thinking, when we think about patent law, what are patents? Patents are nothing but niches are limited. So it actually has a lot of applicability. Okay, moving from authoritarian to legalistic, absolutistic. We have recognition of mortality, quest for meaning and purpose in life, extended time frame future, consequential thinking arises. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, it's a lot of words for basically, if we want to have a we society, it can't all be dependent on that one guy, because when that one guy dies, there's no more society, and then the hierarchy gets turned upside down. And we certainly have seen that through the various empire phases of all nations, where basically you have one great emperor and he does great, and then he dies, or his son kills him, or something like that, and then all of a sudden you're back to square one. And this is the idea, I think, that our founding fathers came up with, where they were going to make an authority structure that was order-driven, where we were going to be a nation of laws, not men. So, and in lots of ways, when you look at American government today, it is very blue legalistic and colors a lot of how we proceed in our daily lives. Now, remember what we said about the trust boundary. These are all societies below the trust boundary, and so they are belief-based. Though there may be good reasons for beliefs, they are not necessarily primary rational societies. Okay, going from legalistic we back to entrepreneurial I. Aspires to better life now for self. Challenges higher authority to produce tangible results. Seeks one way among many options. Okay, so basically it's like we look at the authority structure and we say, this isn't working out for me. Being part of this we, I can't seem to get up in the hierarchy. I can't get my needs met. I am going to find a way to reach my goals. Status alone is not going to give me what I want. Goals and achievement suddenly come in. And that's how we move from blue to orange. One of the classic blue to orange transitions that I've seen in the world is the process of divorce for most people. Most people move, they're in a very, very legalistic we definition. It's recognized by society, a marriage. But it's not happy. So one of them says, you know what? I desire a better life for myself. I'm getting out of this partnership. And challenging higher authority, yeah, you got to go to court, you got to deal with the judge to produce tangible results. Yeah, now I'm rid of the old ball and chain, whatever. And seeks one best way among many options. They're trying to optimize their own personal circumstance. Okay, and lots of our American business basically sits, the other thing is it sits on that rational trust boundary transition, okay, between blue and orange. Okay. So then we go from an entrepreneurial, we evolve some more, an entrepreneurial to a communitarian society. And what do you know? We discover material wealth does not bring happiness or peace. We have a renewed need for community, sharing, enrich inner life, sensitivity to have-not gaps. So all of a sudden, we've made it. We're sitting in the big house on the hill, but we're lonely, and we don't have any shared space. And so suddenly we are looking for a larger connection. The fact that we have a new car doesn't make any difference. The fact that we have 3 new cars don't make any difference. It's funny because when I think of this, I think of the Jethro Tull song "Locomotive Breath." So for those that are interested, you can go look that up. Now, the second tier stuff. This is big. This is a big deal because what happens when we go from a green to a yellow society? All of a sudden, we have a very, very key element, and that key element is self-awareness. So all of a sudden we're actually aware of the world around us, and we're aware that we are separate from the world. We are distinct and unique in the world. And Don's transition steps are overwhelmed by economic and emotional costs of caring, confronted by chaos and disorder, need for tangible results and functionality. Knowing moves above feeling. Okay, so here you are, you're a communitarian, you feel you're worried about everybody else, but you get to the point where you just can't deal with it anymore. I mean, there's so many poor people, there's so much misery. Jesus said, the poor, they will always be with you. Think about some of this stuff. You finally say, you know what? If there's going to be a change, okay, first I have to understand myself. Then I have to go out, understand the society, and then I have to actually try to enact the change. And at some level, I like the statement, knowing moves above feeling, because what that really says is that we see a receding prospect of our limbic mind, our emotional mind, and we have a rising prospect with our conscious mind. A fascinating transition, because now we're not feeling the same things that we used to feel. We look at a situation and we see somebody that's poor and we realize that we can't give them our wallet because we can't get back to the airport to do whatever task we're supposed to do. And so we have not thrown away the concept of empathy, and that's really important. We have not thrown away the concept of empathy, but we can no longer proceed as if empathy is the only thing that matters. And then the final transition. Senses between yellow, a yellow eye, flex flow, and turquoise values, whole view, globalist renewal, turquoise. Senses order within chaos. Search for guiding principles. Whole earth problems arise as technology connects everyone. Spirituality backed with physics. Okay. This is a very, very interesting transition because now what we start to see are the beginnings of what I call a system dynamic mindset, where we start going, everything is connected in a system, and if we don't come to terms with the fact that everything is connected in a system, then we can't make any progress. This is an enormous idea because so much of what we do is focused on one thing. And we fix that and then we're surprised when, well, you fix that, then we have another problem popped up. Because the reality is these things are connected. And of course, if you want to use popularized idioms, the whole idea of a butterfly effect, right? The butterfly that flaps its wings in the jungles of Central America causes a hurricane that hits the Gulf of Mexico. So those are the basic transitions, and we're going to talk more about those in the second part, the follow-on piece to this particular video, the next time. Thanks for watching Questionable Swamis. I'm Chuck Pazeshki.